guys, Buildoidy here, and this is going to be, a sort of preliminary look at the RX 480 from just based on what we already have floating around on the internet. I do not have an RX 480. I do know a few, well, I know that there are people out there who have the cards, but I certainly don't have one, and I won't be having one until they turn up in shops. So do me a favor and don't buy all of them in the UK, okay? I need to be able to buy one if you want me to cover it. So that's that. And well, let's take a look at this PCB we got here, and then we'll talk about some other stuff like my hopes and dreams for the RX 480, which are just completely dumb because I could wait 2 weeks. But the line for the store to buy patience is really, really, really long, and I ain't got patience to stand in line for that. So let's take a look at this. We got a 6-phase core voltage VRM right here, and it's a true 6-phase because we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 driver FETs. And you might be like, are you sure those aren't high side or low side MOSFETs? Well, we got a low side MOSFET right here, and we got a high side MOSFET right there. So those have to be driver chips. They're way too small to be power MOSFETs compared to the actual power MOSFETs that are near them. And we got 6 inductors, so this is definitely a real 6-phase VRM. For a 150 watt card, completely overkill, but that's AMD for you. Next up, we have another VRM up here, and that's probably the auxiliary voltage. That's a single phase, and it's way too blurry to tell anything except, well, right here we got a high side FET, and right here we got an inductor as well as a capacitor. So, there's not really much we can say about that. There's a voltage control chip right here. Now, based on the fact that this is a 6-phase, I'm pretty sure that voltage controller is going to be the 3567B. So that's the same controller as the 290X, as the 390X, and the Fury series cards. So, and I'm saying that because that's the only 6-phase voltage controller AMD has ever used on a reference design, and I don't think they would use a different one just because it's a new generation, because they're probably using the same power management technology as they've been using on the past cards, in which case this controller already supports it, and they don't need to make a new one. That's why the 3567B exists. There's a 3567A, and the differentiation between the A and the B is the B works with AMD's GPU power management, whereas the A is targeted at motherboards. So let's keep moving. That's the voltage controller. And here we got another VRM, and this is most likely memory. And I really hope we get voltage control over that. It's a single phase, and it looks like a memory VRM, and it's located in where most likely a memory VRM would be. So yeah, and its job is going to be to feed the GDDR5 chips surrounding the GPU, and I'll get to why I really hope we get voltage control on that later. And then we got one small grouping of components over here, which is just enough to be its own VRM, but I'm not 100% sure. This right here is certainly, a chip big enough to be its own high side and low side MOSFET with an integrated driver even, or even without a driver. I mean, this is a very small, very low power VRM right here, assuming it is a VRM, of course. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be the same kind of voltage as the 0.95 volt rail on the 290X, 390X, Fury, and the 0.95 volt rail is basically a voltage that deals with the display output section of the GPU, and raising that voltage generally cleans up any black screen issues, and it helps with cold bugs when running really, really high core voltages. So yeah, hopefully we get control over that as well. And I'm saying I hope that we get control over all these voltages because there are rumors floating around that AMD is going to offer better software overclocking support. And that's great, that's awesome. I mean, I always have my soldering pen, but the less I have to use the soldering pen, the happier I'll be. So if we get good software support, that's a huge plus for AMD in my book. I mean, they already give us some of the best reference PCBs you could ask for, so now that they give us proper overclock, if they also give us now proper overclocking tools, that's like, yes, I never have to buy a, you'd never have to buy a full custom card, because like you'd never really need something like a Lightning, because the reference cards would already support everything you need. The big deal with like the Lightning and the Matrix on the 290X and the past cards was, well, you got better voltage control on them. That was like the biggest deal. You had memory voltage, you had PLL, you had the 0.95 volt rail. You had a bunch of voltages that exist on the card that usually aren't accessible through software, made accessible through software because ASUS and MSI took the time to make them accessible. So if AMD makes it accessible on the reference cards, that's a huge deal. That's super useful. It'll make overclocking, there will be basically more room to push the card because you'll be able to fine tune more voltages. Now, assuming they don't give us control over all the voltages on this card, I really do hope we at least get memory and we get core voltage, because the RX 480, right, is looking to be in the same performance range as a 390X while having a 256-bit bus clocked at 8 gigahertz, so only 256 gigabytes per second of bandwidth on the memory. Now it does have color compression, which the 390X didn't have, but color compression can only get you so far, and sometimes you might be dealing with incompressible data. So the 390X, with its 320 gigabytes per second of bandwidth, um, it's like if you reach that same performance with a much lower bandwidth bus, that compression better be damn good, or you're going to start running out of bandwidth really, really badly. And if that happens, then, we need to be able to push the memory a lot. It's spec'd at 8 gigahertz out of the box. But assuming you push something like, say, a 20% or maybe 30% core overclock, which, it's not impossible if you compare it to previous 200 millimeter chips from AMD, but and I'm saying 200 millimeter square, like die size, because AMD's chips really, like, the die size actually makes a huge difference in how well they overclock. Like Fiji clocks like 250, well, 1200 plus minus 50, depend with a lot of voltage, whereas say Bonaire, which is absolutely tiny, uh, clocks like 1400 with a ton of voltage. So, that's 200 megahertz difference. So, this being a smaller chip, I'm hoping it'll clock better. And if it clocks really well on the core, well, there's a good chance that at like a 30% overclock, you won't be seeing any FPS scaling from, like, say, the start of 25% or 20%, because you're just completely starved for bandwidth. So hopefully we can push this memory. Like, either it clocks well on stock volts, or we get voltage control and it clocks well on raised volts, because otherwise I can see this card having serious issues when clocked really, really high on the core. Which would completely kill it in, say, like LN2 overclocking if it scales well. Because, I mean, there's still no card that beats the 980 Ti, and if this somehow reached like 2 gigahertz plus, it could, just saying, it could beat out the 980 Ti on LN2. But if the memory can't keep up with the core, it doesn't matter that the core is doing 2 gigahertz. So yeah, this is, there's a lot of uh, lot of like that I'm concerned about. But we'll know for sure basically a few weeks after launch, because I can't LN2 GPUs. I don't have the equipment for LN2ing GPUs properly. I mean, I have the taped up pots. I'll try do that, but it's not perfect. It would be much better if I had a proper LN2 pot to see, because I'll be fighting the pot being crap instead of fighting the card for more performance, um, which obviously puts a damper on the progress, because I'll be struggling with just keeping the temperatures instead of just dealing with overclocking. So that's that. But yeah, do I actually think 2 gigahertz is realistic? Not really. I don't think it'll actually reach 2 gigahertz even on LN2, unless like GlowFlow delivers FX style overclocking, because Glowflow, their processes don't generally have a cold bug, and they scale really, really, really well with voltage. Now, unfortunately, 14 nanometer from Global Foundries is actually a adapted process from Samsung, and Samsung's processes generally don't like low temperatures. They stop working really early, so this will be interesting. But we'll know for sure on launch day, and I'm excited to see what it is that like how it behaves, because at least on air cooling and water cooling, I expect it to behave pretty well. Um, it's not like Samsung's process doesn't scale with voltage. It scales great with voltage. It just doesn't scale with temperature. And that's based off the fact that uh, Samsung's memory chips, like Samsung makes memory chips, and those are just famous for clocking really, really well with really high voltages. So it'd be somewhat reasonable to expect something similar from a Samsung architecture for building GPUs. But of course, it could be all over the place. But like say TSMC has a cold bug on basically everything they make, and the cold bugs are getting steadily worse, and the voltage scaling is getting worse faster than the cold bugs. So yeah, the 1080 already proved that it's really not good on LN2, and it's not really changing because we still haven't seen any world records with a 1080, and there is a 1080 Kingpin. It does exist. There's one of them, and it's in EVGA's GPU development lab, and if that thing still hasn't posted a world record, then I don't think anything is going to post a world record as far as 1080s go right now. So it could be really interesting to see how the RX 480 does on LN2, because it could be a really, really good option for, like, say, 4-way or 3-way, like where AMD already has an advantage against the 980 Ti. Like a Fury X clocked at like a fraction of the speed of a 980 Ti in Crossfire can get very, very close to a 4-way 980 Ti setup. Um, just because the Fury X is completely botched on the software and the power management and just everywhere else, nobody wants to deal with the card. So nobody really pushed it super far. But from what I've seen, if you take a Fury X really like into the 1200s, it starts catching up to a 980 Ti, clocked into the 1700s. If this, clocks well, it could very easily take the 4-way and the 3-way Firestrike scores, because there's currently that's held by the 980 Ti's, and those are a pain to deal with. Whereas this is super cheap, very low power, so it won't be so hard to handle, and that would be just awesome. So yeah, it could easily take the world records for Firestrike and even, well, not Unigen, because Unigen is now a CPU benchmark, but a lot of the really GPU heavy stuff, this could easily win the 4-ways and the 3-ways, because Nvidia doesn't really have a big lead in that area as it is. And so this wouldn't really have to close much of a gap, assuming that it's starting on around 390X level performance. So yeah, but overall, I'm just like super, super excited. I mean, we have a reference PCB that's already like looking to be really good. I'm concerned about the memory, but that's not that's probably not going to be a huge deal. I could be completely wrong on that. And yeah, other than that, the 470 and the 460 are just like exciting. I really want to get a 460 just to have it as like a backup card, because that thing's not going to even have a PCIe connector, and that would be super convenient for me to use when doing like CPU benchmarks or something, so I don't have to worry about PCIe cables, which are always a massive pain to deal with. And yeah, so I'm excited for Polaris. This PCB we got right here from AMD, it's like when it comes out, unless they went super, super cheap on the componentry here, it's going to be a solid card, just like the reference design is already going to be a really, really solid card. And then it's just about getting voltage control and hopefully it scales. Like that's the biggest deal here. Like it doesn't matter if your card has great voltage control if it doesn't scale. But this is GlowFlow, and everything GlowFlow has ever made has, well, at least anything I know GlowFlow has made has scaled. And it's Samsung, and Samsung also scales with voltage at least. So yeah, hopefully it'll be good. For gaming, I mean, it's a 390X for like $200. What more could you freaking ask for? Um, and for overclocking, I mean, worst case scenario, it doesn't beat the 980 Ti, but that's not really much of a loss when nothing right now can beat the 980 Ti. Um, yeah. And basically, oh yeah, and let's talk about actually my plans for when this actually launches and turns up in my hands. I'm gonna buy this, and I'm thinking of just doing like a super long live stream with the card. Like maybe I'm not thinking 24 hours because that would be terrible. Like 8 hours in, you would just yeah, I'd be just freaking dying. But I am thinking of doing a really, really long live stream where basically I'll get the card, unbox it, we'll run some benchmarks on stock, then I'll tear the card down, look at volt modding it, assuming we don't have software support on day one. I'm also going to try cap mods and basically everything. On that note, I've got a shitload of capacitors because I recently ordered a bunch of volt modding supplies, so that's going to be, like yeah, I'm super excited, and we only got what, like, right? Let me check the. We only have 14 more days to go. Wait, no, that's wrong. 12. 12 more days to go. So, yeah. I mean, 12 more days until the big NDA. I don't know if that's actually a launch date. Nobody tells me anything. I'm not sponsored. Um, so, yeah. It'd be really cool if I got one of these for free. On the other hand, I'd need a way bigger YouTube channel. Oh well, if you're wondering about PCB analysis videos, the 1080s are shaping up to be a bit of a problem. I mean, I saw the Gigabyte card up close, like biggest picture I could find. Can't make heads nor tails of how it's laid out as of right now, and I can't even like figure out what parts it's using. So I'm not. There's no plans of doing the Gigabyte card. I can tell you it won't explode, but that's not really much of a concern on a card that just doesn't scale at all. And the Asus 1080, I mean, I've seen it, but I still can't get like part numbers. I mean, it's international rectifier some things, I just can't figure out what exactly it is. So yeah, I might just pull up something from my like big long list of cards I want to do that are old. So if there's a card you want to see get a PCB breakdown, then you can drop a comment down below. Oh yeah, and in other news, I got volt modding supplies. So now I can finally try max out the Fury X's, and the Gigabyte motherboard review is almost done. I'm in the finishing stages for that. So yeah, that'll be up on the blog in like a day or two, and then everything is going. Yeah, there is progress being made everywhere, as far as I'm concerned. Except on me getting LN2. Well, actually, no, I'm getting LN2 next week, so that's great. So more LN2 coming, more reviews coming, more everything. So yeah, and then of course this is coming on the 29th. I hope. I really hope it's coming on the 29th. I don't think I could survive any more waiting for such a good value card. Like $200. I mean, come on. $200, yay! So that's that for this video. Yeah, I don't think this was a very good video, to be completely honest with you. But if you liked it, there's a like button. If you think it was dumb and don't want to see a video like this ever again, well, we got a dislike button just for that. I mean, press it. Or leave a comment. You can also just tell me yourself what you thought was terrible about the video, because I won't change production quality. Production quality will stay at this level of paint and scribbles because I'm way too lazy to do proper production. But if you want better content, I'm always willing to accommodate. So leave a comment down below. And yeah, like, share, subscribe. Yeah, share the video if you liked it. You know, like if enough of you share this, somehow this YouTube channel might get 10,000 subscribers, and I might get one for free. But yeah, that's really it. So yeah, see ya next time.